You gotta be kidding me. Oh, hello everyone. It's Friday, November 7th, 2008. And this is WFTL Bytes, your occasiodaily FOSS and Linux news show with your host, me, Marcel Gagné, he who has the cold in his voice. I got a cold in my node. I'm just a little bit amazed by some of the things I was reading today. But before I tell you about these things, let me put on my press hat. Press hat. All right, I'm going to start out with something that is just totally bizarre. It's kind of like totally weird. It's a YouTube video. It's actually a capture of a bit of a CNN interview of the post-Obama election. Here's what it is. There's a guy named Alex Castellanos, who is apparently a Republican consultant and a CNN contributor, who is talking about Obama's call for a bottom-up redefinition of the U.S. government. And Castellanos goes on to compare that to Eric Raymond's Cathedral and the Bazaar. So effectively, he's saying that Obama is an open-source president, and that if he does things the way he's talking about doing them, he's going to be recreating the U.S. government in the United States in an open-source development method. Kind of bizarre, almost, to hear that in a CNN newscast. Anyway, the links are at the bottom. Remember that. Check it out. It's really quite fascinating. Yes, he has a cold. The second thing that's interesting is from PC World magazine, or PC World's website, which has a question, and the question is, if Windows is dead, what's next? And of course, the whole dead thing has to do with the fact that, Vista was supposed to be the greatest thing that ever happened. And, Vista is just kind of like, people are calling it, let's put it this way, people are calling it the ME the second and things like, all sorts of terrible names. Anyway, everybody abuses Vista, let's put it that way, which is why Microsoft is forging ahead with Windows 7. Anyway, to some of us, the answer to that question is obvious. What's next? Well, Linux obviously is obvious, but the article suggests that perhaps what is next is the cloud. All our applications living in the cloud. Or virtualization, which of course comes back to the cloud. Well, whether or not that's true, you can check out the article. Whether or not that's true, the cloud is largely Linux-based. So in the end, I guess Linux really is the future, no matter how you look at it. It seems that the Android phone, the G1, the T-Mobile G1, has been cracked in an interesting sort of way. There's an application called pTerminal. Here's how it works. Use pTerminal to telnet into the application, and you get root access. Cool! Sounds fantastic, sounds amazing. Some people are saying, shows that there's a real security problem out there. Well, there's a guy named Avi Greenhart who's quoted on Linux Insider. I've got two links for you, one from Linux Insider and one from Linux Pro Magazine. This Avi Greenhart guy says that... He says, what's the big deal? I mean, the whole point is that it's an open source development application. So you get access to the root. So what? I mean, that's kind of the whole point. You get access, you can define, you can create applications, and so on. Apparently, the only thing that it really gets you at this moment, anyhow, is a way to bypass the internal memory so that you can load more applications on the phone. More applications. Everybody needs more applications. Anyway, over at Computer World says, Microsoft fears Linux. And that Redmond, or Vista's Redmond from old Vista there, is the last great hope to crush the coming onslaught of Linux. Yes, apparently the real reason for the fear from Microsoft is, wait for it, netbooks. Asus and Acer account for 90% of the netbook market out there right now. And guess what? They run Linux. And they figure that what's happening is that Linux on netbooks is kind of the thin edge of the wedge to get people to start using desktop Linux. And Microsoft's real fear is that when people start getting used to Linux, they'll think that it's okay. And that would be bad for them. Oh well, speaking of netbooks, over at ZDNet, they're talking about the HP 1000 again, and that HP might actually be trying to roll their own Linux distribution for the coming of the HP 1000 running Linux in January. Well, the reason I mention this article is because there's a really dumb comment, in my opinion, okay? The person says, wait for it, by customizing Linux, HP is illustrating that the open source OS is still too complicated for the average bear on the desktop. To which I must respond, oh, please. The reason they're customizing it is because they can. It's an open source application. They have access to the code. They can do whatever they want with it. For goodness sakes. Anyway, on that note, I'm done. I'm leaving it here. Have a good weekend. Bye. No, I really am done. Bye.